Good morning, and thank you for joining us today. Our webinar will begin in just a minute. We're going to give folks a minute to get settled, and then we will go. So please stay on the line. Thank you for joining us for our presentation today. We'll begin in just a moment. We're going to give folks a minute or two to get in and sit down, and we'll start in just a moment. Well, thank you for joining us today for our webinar entitled Adjusting Holiday Anti-Fraud Measures to Hit Revenue Goals. I'm really excited for today's topic. I'm sure everybody on the line today is deep into their holiday planning. I know it's a make or break time of year for many merchants, and having the fraud department squared away is a huge part of that. But a lot of times, I know that in my conversations with merchants about this time of year, a lot of you look at the holiday season as one big spike in orders. And even from a fraud perspective, one big undifferentiated headache from the beginning of the season, Black Friday to the end of the season, New Year's Day. And I know it's a very, very busy time for everybody, but it's so important to get that buttoned up. But I'm excited today because my presenters are going to share some data that might change your thinking on that. They're going to help you identify patterns that crop up within the holiday season that might cause your risk profile to vary at certain times. So in other words, are some times and some activities safer than others over the course of the holidays for your business? So I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. We have Emily and Yarden from Riskified. Emily is the Director of Analysis Insights, and Yarden is a Content Director. They're going to take you through the presentation. But before I turn it over to them, I just wanted to take care of a few details. They will be accepting questions. I don't know how much time we're going to have to answer them live here, but we're going to try to get to a few of them. Please ask your questions anyway, even if we don't get to them. You see the space in your webinar dashboard to ask questions. Go ahead and ask anything you want. Someone from either Emily or Yarden will get back to you offline if we're not able to answer your questions online. So we want to encourage folks to answer those questions. Also, for folks that registered and were not able to make the whole thing, or you came in late, or you have to leave early, we are recording the webinar and it's going to be on cardnotpresent.com soon. We'll send out an email to notify you when that is available. So if you need to go back and look at the presentation or the deck, you'll be able to do that. Also, there are going to be a couple of polls within the presentation today. Please look out for those, answer them, engage with us. We want to be able to see what the folks on the call are thinking about a couple of different things. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Yarden right now, and he's going to take us through the presentation. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. I'm Yarden from Riskified's content team from marketing, and I'm here with Emily from our data insights team. And we're going to talk about everybody's favorite subject this time of year, the holiday season, and how adjusting your holiday anti-fraud measures can help you hit those revenue goals. We're going to talk today about the challenges and the opportunities that the holidays bring with them. We're going to talk about a new approach to holiday fraud review, something that we came up with, and we hope you'll find very interesting. And then we'll talk about the summary and some key takeaways and actionable items that you can actually take back to your teams and hopefully implement. So without further ado, I'll just introduce Riskified. We were established in 2012 with a revolutionary new business model, the Chargeback Guarantee, which everybody knows about today, where every order we approve is guaranteed against fraud-related chargebacks. Now today, the company has expanded its offering to generally improve e-commerce sales in where we can, still to approve and guarantee more orders, to protect against ATO, account takeover, to offer alternative payment methods to save orders declined by the bank, and all in a glass box solution where you can actually gain full transparency into our decisions, into our performance, and that. In terms of the merchants we work with some of the biggest clients across industries and from across the globe. And we partner with merchants to really help them with their own unique challenges, which means that every merchant can use us in a different way. For example, Ctrip is the largest OTA in China, and they do a great job with their own domestic market, but they're less familiar with other markets, so they send us their foreign clients. Gucci have time constraints and need to fulfill their orders very fast. So in order to avoid delays, they send us orders that were slated for manual review, and we review those automatically and instantly. There's eSky, another large Polish OTA that send us their Latin American orders, and sometimes when they're over inundated, they send us their overflow. But really, most merchants send us all their orders, or they start with one segment and then they expand to others. I'm talking about merchants like Finish Line, Daniel Wellington, Ring, Canada Goose, Burlington, and many, many more. So in order to get us into this and into the gist of things, Emily, what does the holidays actually mean? It seems like new holidays are popping up and that every year the season is starting early and earlier. Are we seeing the same trends in our data?
It's a very good question. Hi, I'm Emily, by the way. The holiday shopping is starting always a bit earlier and earlier. We can see that even on the data presented here, and I think we can safely say that it began 2 weeks earlier in 2017 compared to 2016. We also see shoppers might start their holiday shoppings during the summer, so this makes a lot of sense. But when we're talking about the holiday season, we're talking about where we see the steady and significant order spike, not just a one-time thing. So maybe we should take a step back to understand why this is actually happening. I think in past times when we were talking about holiday shopping, a lot of us would address mainly the Christmas shopping, mainly North America, maybe the UK and Australian Boxing Day, then Black Friday got in. That was what we had. And then when e-commerce was introduced, Cyber Monday came in and a lot of other different holidays. And this is extending more and more, and we're seeing a lot of more holidays, mini holidays. And all these shopping options and events are getting more known. And with this knowledge comes popularity and also increases and spikes. So in the e-commerce world, we can see it even more since local days, holidays, and benefits like the Chinese Single Days or other local holiday weekends are now available for all, right? E-commerce isn't only one thing for one country. So in this season, just to give this more context, we see people that are buying from themselves, like in Cyber Monday or Christmas after sales, but also a lot of family gifts are here. So we can safely say that we are talking about a high shopping season, whether sales for yourself and some reductions or gifts for other people. But while we see a tremendous sales spike, we also see that this isn't really a big or one joint holiday season, but more of like some kind of umbrella for several shopping seasons with different customer motivations, behaviors, opportunities, and also fraud threats.
Okay. So we know the holidays are more numerous and we know the season is getting longer, but let's talk about the opportunities that they hold. Projections like every year are forecasting record sales, modest gains in the overall retail sales, but really huge gains in online sales. So more people are turning to the internet to buy their gifts. We have here a unique situation where sales during a few weeks can really help make a stellar year in terms of revenue, but also an opportunity to get new customers in, to meet new people, get them to like your shop, enjoy the shopping experience and the service, and hopefully come back.
Yeah, so we can see like the entire holiday opportunity here, right? We can see some different projections, different numbers that we're seeing with one thing that is common to all, which means that e-commerce will be growing in insignificant amounts. So even in a more conservative point of view, which is what we did with our data, while the holiday season is, let's say, roughly 9 years, the holiday season sales are worth much more. We can see that in several industries, the holiday season sales can be worth up to a third of their yearly revenue. And on average, we see something around 20%. we actually see this increase in almost all industries, some more than others. I think we might address this later on. And just to give some perspective about the amount and order volumes we're talking about, the current projections of the holiday season in the US alone are equal to last year's global projections. So this is quite an opportunity.
Yeah, indeed. And I just want to make sure it's clear here that the Riskified data that you see here is from 2017, from last year, and the other sets of data are projections for the upcoming holiday season. Okay, so we spoke about the opportunity, and with the opportunities, of course, come the challenges. And these are pretty much all interrelated. We all know the huge volume spikes, the long queues, pressure to review orders for fraud. We see orders that behave differently during the holidays to complicate matters. We see more mismatches. And then it's really like a domino effect, especially with the time constraint, because there's so many orders and tight fulfillment schedules. And then you're 2, 3, 4 weeks into the holidays and the last shipping date is already coming near. So, I mean, just like your website really needs to be holiday ready to accommodate a sharp rise in visitors from a technical standpoint, so does your fraud team. And if you don't manage to do that, it will definitely result in false declines and inaccurate decisions, long queues and fulfillment delays, and things that really impact the people that you invested a lot to bring to your site in the first place. So it's lost money. Now, I haven't said anything new here. You're all familiar with all that. But Emily, can you perhaps give us some examples of the kind of behavior we see more around the holidays and a bit about the fraud? Because we don't want to downplay the fraud.
No, we don't. I will address this, but I want to start with what you said about the domino effect causing more false declines. Everything scales in the holiday season. So if something was hurting you in 1% of your orders, now this 1% is extremely higher and more valuable. And I think to understand where this happens, we need to take the customer's point of view here and understand who's shopping and what is a bit different in the holiday season than others. So what happens in the holidays, and I think all of us would probably identify with one or other character here, is that we're quite spontaneous here, right? So we have a lot of mismatches. Everybody's buying, they need to do it now. It's not always pre-planned. And you have a lot of mismatches, not just by volume, but also by rate. This happens a lot more. We mainly find this mismatches in geographical data. So this is quite a severe mismatch from a fraud team point of view. And as this is that happens a lot because it's gift giving season. But we also see a lot more last minute shoppers and expedited shipping here. You didn't manage to order something, you returned it, you need it back away. A lot of things that a lot of us do every gift giving season. We also see a lot more legitimate order velocity spikes. So as most of merchants don't allow some kind of split shipping, and we need to buy a lot of gifts
for different people.
Yes, customers tend to order in multiple orders for several reasons that we will address. But this is very common in the holiday season. Oh, I just forgot to buy that. Now I'm coming back again. And of course, this is it's a very important thing to note, by the way, that if your marketing efforts have succeeded, you're probably seeing a lot of new customers coming in. And all this makes sense, right? You're looking at it from a customer point of view, and it's very easy to understand who's doing this. But I want to talk about your fraud review or fraud rule system point of view, which is completely different. It's overloaded, and the perspective is in the legacy systems usually is completely different. So all these elements, the mismatches, the last minute shopping, the rush shipping, the velocity, the new customers, are usually considered extremely risky by merchants and those fraud systems or rule systems usually. So they flag them and pass them to manual review, which is overloaded, and this causes a lot of false declines in this season. It also might cause something else, which is where I want to start talking about the fraud. While the fraud is growing in the volume, it does not grow by rate. So, and I'm not a big fan of scare tactics. I'm not going to tell you that it's an immense problem, but it might be a big problem for you now. And there is a concern. We are overloaded and we have some time pressure. Also, as probably most of you have heard of or sadly suffered from, buy online, pick up in store fraud, ATOs, account takeovers. which were growing in the past year, will be sure to come in this holiday season again. And remember, fraudsters know, and they are very known, of identifying and exploiting weaknesses. So if they sniffed something, they will probably use that. And combining all these issues with the unique shopping behavior, which sometimes resembles some fraud habits, it makes it really hard to spot and identify your customer friend from your fraudster foe. So I think what I wanted to do initially in this webinar and while digging the data is that, I'm sorry, is to show both the customer behaviors and personas to understand who are our legit customers, where our opportunities might be in, and then present the unique fraud pains you might encounter in this season because of these unique behaviors. And hopefully by getting this data and identifying the indicator within your store in the way that you have implemented your system, it will help you prepare in advance, and you will be able to scale and fit your actual holiday growth and revenue targets.
Cool, thanks, Emily. Let's do a quick polling question now.
Okay, so what do you expect will be your greatest challenge this holiday season? Managing your fraud operation, handling order volume without delaying fulfillment, false declines, or fraud? So we're going to folks a few seconds to answer. And there are your results, Yarden.
Okay. Fraud is the biggest concern.
It is a concern. I mean, if usually, again, it would be 3% of your volume, now these 3%, even if it's going down to 2%, is the much higher rate. So we can completely understand that, but you don't want to be over declining your customers. It's a very, we all know, I think, it's a very problematic balance that you need to suffice.
Right. Okay, so we talked about the challenges, and we can also talk about addressing those challenges. I think the main thing to remember when preparing for the holidays is to really keep calm. Like Emily said, fraud rates, while they might grow in terms of numbers, they actually fall in terms of the rate. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't see fraud, you will, but most orders you see definitely will be good. Now, in order to scale your operation, you really need to automate. That's in order to help speed up order review and really holiday-proof your business. But it's critical to remember that automation is only good if it's based on a lot of very well-tagged data and a lot of expertise to understand that data. So going back, obviously, and reviewing last year is the most important thing. And here, in this webinar, we're going to offer a slightly different way of doing that.
I think if I could just barge in for a second, we were talking about review last year's performance, but as fraudsters, they have these kind of communities. So if they have identified a weak or a pain point that you already have, they will probably try and exploit it in this season. Mm-hmm. So when you're doing your last year's review, also do, let's say, your last 6 months chargeback review and try to identify those specific fraud trends that you have missed. And that spot might be a very easy target for fraudsters, and could be something that you are able to manage right now if you're preparing to in advance.
Okay. And let's see those sub-seasons. Emily, our season analyst here, looked at our data like she always does, and she came up with some interesting insights that actually allow us to break down the holiday season into 4 main sub-seasons. Can you explain what we're seeing here on the graph?
Of course. It's my beloved graph. I'll explain a bit about what we're actually seeing in this graph, like what are these lines. The graph is showing us the changes in order volumes and what is considered the holiday season. Obviously, this is a very high volumes that we are seeing right now, and we're not comparing it to the rest of the year. So it's just this time frame. And as we discussed before, we've seen that the steady increase started on November 1st. So this is where the graph starts, and you can see that it ends on New Year's. You've probably identified the names presented, or some of them, like Black Friday and Single Day. You maybe also have been able to spot what we didn't put out in this graph, which is the other spike in between around November 20th. And we might be able to talk about it a bit later on if you'll be interested. So following these changes, we've decided to dig a bit deeper because there are some extreme changes here in the spikes themselves. And we've managed to identify 4 groups that act alike, and another half one, I'll call it, which are the holiday shopping weekend, which you all know, Black Friday, Cyber Monday, pre-Christmas shopping, which is from that date to actually Christmas itself, which is very interesting. We'll talk about it a lot, I hope. And there's also post-Christmas, like Boxing Day and New Year's
Up until
Eve.
New Year's.
Exactly. What we also found is the pre-season, which is more of an opportunity currently. That would be including Up Singles Day over there. And it's not just, we talked about it, but it's not just a volume behavior, but we've also dug in the customer shipping habits, which are very unique to each season, and we will elaborate on that in the slides.
Okay. Before we actually go into the actual subseasons, here we have some numbers, how order volumes during the 4 subseasons different from the rest of the year averages. These are numbers from 2017. From last year, keep in mind, Black Friday last year was November 24th, whereas this year it's November 23rd. So when you go back and analyze last year or previous years, make sure you have your figures in context. Although I'm sure the spikes will jump out at you. You can't miss them. Here we can see the huge spike over the holiday shopping weekend. The numbers more than double on a daily average that spans that period, which means that actually on the days themselves, it's probably much bigger than that. Now, Emily, it is important to note that when you're looking at solid numbers and ratios, you have to make sure to address it both. Solid numbers obviously are important because if you're getting ready for a 500% spike, when you're reviewing 500 orders, it's not like a 500% spike if you're reviewing 5,000 or 50,000.
Yeah, that's completely correct. And also, probably most of you have some different behaviors, not just by the order count, by the average order value, which changes from industry to industry. Some of them jump very high, some very low. It's really different. You really have different numbers and different merchants. That's what happens when you have overview numbers. So to sum these numbers up, we're seeing the major issue of the holidays, right? We're seeing the volume spikes, which means overload, which means scaling, which means automating, and this is increasing during the entire season. I know some of you might be already spotting the fact that we are showing a decrease in Christmas time and order count. That is true in the overview level, but statistics as they are sometimes are hiding on the overview level the interesting stuff. So I would say that this is a very interesting subseason, and there is a very significant increase there, but I don't want to jump ahead of our slides.
Yeah, okay. Save it for later. So let's dive in. You talked about a half season before, and this is actually what you're referring to, November 1st to November 23rd. Can you tell us about early November? We know it's different than early December, but how is it different than early October?
I think maybe we'll talk a bit about why this is a semi-subseason, not a complete subseason, and then talk about the actual buying persona opportunity here. But it's safe to say that it's different than early October. And the one main thing here is, I think it's actually 2 main things, is that we see the beginning of a steady and significant increase in order volumes. It's not a one-time spike. It's something that you can see very easily when looking for the numbers. And it's continuing, so it's not a random behavior. And we also see a shift in the actual customer behavior. It's more of a gift giving, mainly in the physical goods though, not physical and digital, and at least not now. So from analyzing the behavior of this time, it seems like these are more of your organized customers' personas. There are people who want to prepare in advance. They buy by the book, means that they will have like a full AVS match usually, and a lot of matches, billing and shipping. They will be very classic, like what all of you would probably want all the time. They don't want to worry about the overloads. They don't want to have missing stocks issue. They hate last minute buying, and they're not very spontaneous. So this is one reason of why they're so organized. They also have more desktop orders than usual. So to sum this up, we're seeing like a customer with very high intent, right? They're preparing in advance. If they want to come, they know what they want. They have a higher order volume. This makes them part of this season, and they have higher approval rates, which makes this a very good market for you. But they also have low promo code usage, which isn't very common in this time. And this might hint us to a great opportunity that is not yet utilized.
Okay. We can actually talk about, summarize these tips for the pre-holiday season, which pre-holiday subseason, which is, as you said, half a subseason.
I'll start, I think, with the domestic shoppers part. We might have skipped in the persona description before. These people might be buying in advance, and they're buying locally. They're buying locally, meaning that people are looking for family gifts. It's a domestic holiday Christmas. And they're buying from local shops and also in local holiday dates. I think Single Day is a very good example for that. El Buen Fin, I hope I pronounced it right, is a Mexican holiday weekend, a shopping holiday weekend, also within these dates and showing specific spike. It happens in a lot of local holidays. People are used to buying gifts in those dates, and they are transferring their normal behavior into this e-commerce world. And this time is highly underutilized, like we just did. They are coming in, but they're not using promo codes, mainly because such just are not offered. So this is a great opportunity for merchants to offer those early bird deals, I think it's called, promo codes, and then you will engage all these customers in advance, which is quite cool.
Yeah. Okay, so now let's dip into our first subseason, the holiday shopping weekend.
Full subseason.
Right, full subseason. It's a long weekend from Black Friday to Cyber Monday. These are 4 days worth up to 8.4% of your annual revenue. That obviously varies between industries, but that's just an average figure. It could be much more. What can you tell us about the people who are coming in during these days, and what are they buying?
So I think it's like safe to say that these are people that have been waiting for months for this big weekend sales. They're looking, they had like pre-listed lists of what they want to buy. Some of these offers, you know, in advance that they are going to come on Black Friday. I bought my Kindle like that last year. They're looking for the big items, mainly the expensive items, jewelry, electronics, and gadget. If you sell those, if you're selling from those industries, you might prepare for even like 400 to 1,000 volume spikes on these days. And these people have been, you've probably seen them before on your website if you have some kind of IP tracking, so you might have seen them before. They were looking at items before the actual purchase. They did all of that. But it's important to note that they are self-gifters. They are buying stuff for themselves. And last but not least, about this season, we see a lot of international shoppers. Not just in amount, because we have a significant order amount increase, but also in rate. And this makes sense, right? People all around the world, like me, know that this season is coming. It's not really related to any holiday where I'm from, but it is a very big and known sales season, and it's e-commerce world. It's the global world. So you have a lot of international customers here. And I think maybe I should add here that what we're not seeing in the same, well, industries that are not seeing the same increase are travel tickets and event tickets industries, which are always very popular in the e-commerce, but it's not a seasonal gift. It's not something that you buy for yourself in a specific time, right? You buy like travel tickets when you need them. You buy event tickets when you want to go to a concert, and it's not really a bargain. And we don't see a lot of offerings there in those markets.
Mm-hmm. Also interesting, I read somewhere, some people refer to these days as the Cyber 5, the 5 days between Thanksgiving and Cyber Monday. And I read somewhere that Cyber 6, the Tuesday after Cyber Monday, while volumes will be much lower in terms of shoppers, the conversion rates are much higher, about 13% higher than the Cyber 5 days. So that's something to keep in mind as well. for everybody who comes in maybe a day late. Okay, let's talk about some tips for the holiday shopping weekend.
So I'll start with the international shoppers, which are always prone to false declines as they have a lot of inherent mismatches, whether it's because they're students or travelers or using buying services or sending to a friend, but they always have a foreign credit card, a local address, foreign IPs, a lot of issues. They might have been using like alternative payments or payment methods that you are less acquainted with. And you need to be ready for this, not just in the fraud level, but also in your actual operation system. You need to be able to identify those orders and process them. It's a very, very big growth engine. Don't forget that. And this is a more specific tip, but we see a lot of mismatches in this season. One especially problematic, we will talk about this in another season as well, is the AVS, which is the AVS over declining. It's always a problem, but as this is the mismatches season, it happens a lot more. And it will be always also safe to say that for some reason, a lot of international orders are getting flagged by your AVS system. Be aware of that. They are not orders that are not from the US, UK, and Canada are not supported by AVS. AVS system is only used in those countries. So if you're using it there, it might be a big problem that you're missing.
Big false declines.
Yeah. And also, as this is an actual season, so we now want to talk about the fraud threats of the season. There's also a very big fraud threat here, and it's account takeover, which might be coming into effect here a bit more than usual. It's not just your legitimate shoppers that have been waiting and preparing, but sophisticated fraudsters have also been preparing. And they probably have some aging fake accounts by now, and they were waiting for a time that you will be the most overloaded, occupied, and understaffed, which is the holiday season, especially in these 4 days, and then they'll come into effect.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're talking about this weekend where people are bookmarking the items they want and they're just waiting for the big sale to click on buy. And then it brings us to the pre-Christmas subseason, November 28th to December 23rd. These are 26 days worth up to 22% of your annual revenue. So you're really seeing a very steady stream of shoppers here. Every day, it's just one long peak. And who are the shoppers here, Emily? What are they buying?
So I think as we've seen the self-gifter before, now it's the gift giver completely. We are buying gifts to anyone now, right? We're buying it for our friends, our family, also our postman, our first grade teacher. It could be anyone. Everybody gets a gift for Christmas. And it's like a funny nuance from the data. We can identify this in little details sometimes, like a lot of name mismatches with or without an address mismatch. It depends. I dug into that a bit more because it was an interesting insight. And it depends on the wrapping and shipping policy you might have. Someone will want a lot of orders to come in with a specific or different card. So they will need to have different orders, but they need to get them all to their place. So that's like a nice nuance I was thinking about. And people are really like, if we're talking about what they're buying everything. They're buying fashion, they're buying other clothing, they're buying toys, they're buying GoPros as gifts. Even iTunes is a gift now. Of course, gift cards in general are a gift now. It's one of the most rising industries of the season. But there's also an interesting difference that we will talk about in the tip section in a minute between the early shoppers and the late ones. So if in the beginning of the season we see the more physical goods shopping, standard shipping, you know how to identify those. It happens. It's the common thing to do with classic and old school stuff. Later on, as Christmas gets closer, we see a lot more digital goods and expedited shipping.
Makes sense. Time is running short and you have to get that gift in time. I just have a question, Emily. You talk when we say what and they're buying everything. Are we still excluding travel and tickets here?
Yes and no, I think. Yes, it's not the same increase that we're seeing in different industries, but no, because there is a very specific and interesting increase in both industries. In the travel section, we see more last-minute travel orders, which I don't know if we have a lot of listeners here from the OTA or travel industries, but you know, these are like the riskiest types of orders. Last minute, people buying only a ticket from themselves. But in the holiday season, it might be the businessman that didn't know, or businesswoman that didn't know that she could get into the family dinner, and she just now know that she can, and she's flying into it. So it's a last minute thing. Also, another thing that I think is more common is the Christmas concerts. While this is not really the concert time, not time to buy it, usually buy a concert ticket in advance. There are the Christmas concerts, especially the expensive tickets, which you buy in this season quite a lot.
Mm-hmm. The ballets and the shows, the Nutcracker.
Nutcracker is a classic.
Okay, so we talk about pre-Christmas in terms of tips for this season or sub-season. Can you run us through this slide?
Of course. But first things first, I actually think that maybe the best tip that I can give for this sub-season is to mind your last shipping date. It's important in so many levels for your system identification now. It's high fraud time of this season, for one. And as you stated, that is one thing that you are very concerned of. So identify that. That might be a very interesting spot. But it's also an extremely important date when identifying changes in your customer behavior. This is where your customer behavior changes from the physical orders time to the digital one. And as this subseason nears its end, you might see a huge, really huge spike in digital gift cards, and it is totally legitimate. So you really shouldn't over-decline. Also, conversion rates fall after last shipping date, so it's a good time to market your digital goods over. And adjusting your mindset and also your system is important, obviously. From the fraud angle, generally speaking, fraud during the end of this subseason is more common in physical goods. And also with a lot of time pressure and the never-ending queues, this makes this time so prone to buy online, pick up in store, click and collect, however you call this offering. And let's say that in this past year, as this flow, this buy online, pick up in store has gained popularity within the customer community for its efficient advantages that I can say for myself that are extremely nice. There are also, I think I've seen also new reserve online pickup in store just to avoid the customers from falling out of stock or something like that, which is a great offer, especially for pre-Christmas shopping time and the long in-store queues. But this is also a method that has become a fraudster favorite. If you're browsing in the dark web a bit, probably saw job postings, they have that. And people are looking for what they call legitimate looking person for pickup. It is completely common, and a lot of merchants, I think the main problem in the season is that a lot of merchants use some kind of manual validation or ID check at the pickup store, and it will become, I think, very hard to scale this process and to actually do it when you are so overloaded with the buy online pickup in store, and you do want to stay with the offering. So we can talk a lot about why this happens, and I'd be happy to elaborate, but this is something you should be very aware of.
I wonder if I'm a legitimate looking person.
I think you are.
Okay, so now we talked about time before Christmas and the fact that digital orders rise throughout time and physical decline. Now it's Merry Christmas. And Emily, who is buying gifts on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day?
So this really is my favorite subsequent. Also, Christmas is such a nice holiday, but I think like persona-wise, we know what's happening here. People forgot to buy stuff, and now they're trying to buy it. It will be people using their mobile under the dinner table trying to order those digital gift cards last minute or on the way to their parents. Maybe even like a desktop. I imagine that like you're tracking into the home office room after looking around the house and seeing which brands are favorite here, and then ordering those relevant digital gift cards. And that's what's interesting in this season. They're buying digital goods, they're buying digital gift cards, but it's not only from gift card shops, which is true for the entire pre-Christmas season as well. But the major increase here is digital goods and physical first stores. So like stores selling their own gift cards, not a gift card store. And this is a major increase here. So while your physical shop might be seeing less to none customers, probably some of them are actually closed on Christmas, your online shop might be seeing an amazing spike in digital orders.
Okay, you got to beware. And also, it's important to note that shops that specialize in selling gift cards are aware of the nuances, but physical stores are less, familiar with such a spike and maybe are not sure what to do with all that volume and how to really vet it for fraud. So, what tips can you share for this subseason?
I think you touched exactly the pain points here. I will talk a bit about the physical stuff here. It's worth a mention. Last minute shoppers are buying last minute, and if you're open, if you have an actual store that is open, they will try and buy even as they go. So they might order with their mobiles and then come pick up in store on their way. And you need to be prepared for an option like that, a sudden rise in some less popular order flows that you might be less familiar with, like buy online pick up in store and mobile processes. But I think like the most important part here is the digital gift cards. There is an immense opportunity of growing with digital gift cards always, but especially in this time of year. And they are always risky, and fraud methods are completely different than in physical goods. So to give like a quantitative example about that, we've started working lately with a very big retailer, and we analyze the data as we always do before we start working with a merchant, and we've seen I don't want to say incredible because it's a very interesting data point that while digital gift cards were around, I think, 3% of their sales revenue, which is a lot, it accounted for a third of their chargeback, which is a lot more, making this the most risky segment that they are selling. And there's a very specific reason for why this is happening. Digital gift card fraud is completely different than physical gift card fraud. It's actually fraudsters abusing your physical first methods. So one of the more sophisticated methods, I think, we have the stat online, that we've been seeing a lot, is the digital fraudsters that are overcoming your physical fraud solutions with the AVS system. AVS is always a false client creator. I can talk about it for hours, but I won't do it right now. But during these 2 days, it's especially important to avoid the opposite, proving fraud due to AVS. So what these fraudsters do is to put the legit credit card holder details in the billing address, some billing details, and get that positive AVS. And they also add the same shipping address, making this a perfect order for a physical one, right? AVS, full match, billing equals shipping, looks perfect. And why wouldn't they do that? This is how they overcome your legacy systems. They get automatically approved sometimes. The digital gift card then actually gets up to their mobile for immediate download or email. They don't care about that address. And we've seen this fraud run, this specific behavior, in a 10% rise in the last year. So I will say that this might happen a lot more this year.
Yeah. Okay. And now Christmas is over. People are getting back to work. Fraud teams are exhausted, but there are still 6 days worth almost 4% of online revenue. So who are these shoppers? Are they just forgetful? Did they forget to get their gifts?
Maybe some of them actually. It's a good compensation if you gave like a bad gift or something. But I think it's more like a e-commerce version of an after party. It's after sales time. We still see an actual online shopping holiday season. We see higher order volumes than usual, even up to 15% more than your daily average. So it's definitely part of a season, this umbrella holiday season. And I think like if we're going historically wise, it's based originally on the time of Boxing Day, which we actually see because we see that this is mainly a physical goods order time where shoppers are trying to find their best bargains, whether it's the stock that has remained from your shopping season or anything that could be bought for a bargain price. Mm-hmm. But for your actual question, if we're trying to identify the persona here, our main shopping group would be actually the opportunist shopper, the ones that know how and when to spot a good deal. They will be, again, mainly self-gifters, like the original shopping holiday season. They probably already bought what they wanted on Black Friday and Cyber Monday, and they got all their present, and now they're just browsing for clearance bargains. You might even see this with, or like very long browsing times with the website, unusually large ones, bigger ones. Although but I think we might be still seeing those forgetful shoppers, some kind of subgroup of gift givers, probably the forgetful ones, but also New Year's shoppers. And they will be using rush shipping because it's a very short time frame and it is a physical goods holiday. So we can see that could be like this rush shipping actually could be twice as popular than it is usually.
Okay, let's talk about some post-Christmas tips for this season, for the 6 days after Christmas.
We'll actually start with fraud this time and then get into the hidden opportunity. It's also a nice closure as the first preseason was mostly an opportunity. This is also time for your patient fraudsters to come along. So merchants are often off guard. They are tired after the huge spike. They are less aware that this is still a very sensitive time. Also, all of us are still in holiday mode, and the fraudsters take advantage over this, like they do on all stuff. While some forgetful gifters might be using your rush shipping or someone really wanting to buy something for New Year's, this is also highly used by fraudsters, especially at this time of year. So be aware of those rush shipping orders in this specific time frame. On the opportunity angle, remember that not all countries and people are celebrating the holidays in the same time. Be aware that in your target market, they might have different shopping, not shopping, but holidays, and consider extending your sales a bit. Also, that's like more of a marketing tip, but this is the time for bargain shoppers. They know that this is what they're doing. So in the marketing angle, you might want to use wording that reflects this.
Interesting. Let's do a quick polling question.
Absolutely. Talking about the post-Christmas period, are you hit by higher than usual chargeback rates after the holiday season? Yes, and we have a designated chargeback dispute team. Yes, but we don't have the resources to dispute chargebacks. Yes, we outsource the chargeback dispute process, or no, we don't see higher chargeback rates. So we'll give you a few seconds to answer here.
Yep, after the holiday season comes the chargeback season.
And here we go.
I mean, there's the never-ending debate on whether it's an issue of rate or volume, and even if you don't see a higher chargeback rate, you might see a higher chargeback volume.
Mm-hmm. Okay, most people are addressing or don't need to.
I see a significant amount is saying we are seeing higher chargeback rates here, which is very interesting. I think one of the most issues that is rising probably more is the friendly fraud here.
Mm-hmm.
The regretful buyers, they are called.
Right. Talking about chargebacks and disputing them, we do see that there are things you can do in order to dispute chargebacks, especially in cases of liar buyers and stuff like that. This could be an entire webinar on its own, but you really need to make sure you're collecting all that important evidence, any historic interactions with the customer, emails back and forth, phone calls from the call center, what IP they came in from, what phone number they called from, anything around digital fingerprints. If you've seen the device twice, once with a legitimate purchase that wasn't charged back, and then with a purchase that was, obviously proof of delivery. It's really a complex issue, and you see a link here to our chargeback dispute guide, which you are welcome to reference and see for yourself some of the data we have around this and some of our tips. We'll also send a link in an email after the webinar. In addition, we want to talk about extending the opportunity. Singles Day sales generated more than 5.5 times the online revenue of Black Friday in Cyber Monday in 2016 combined in the US. Emily, is there any evidence that Singles Day is becoming big outside of China and the Chinese online market?
I think we actually see this on the graph,
Yeah,
right?
it's pretty clear.
But beside the graph, let's just ask ourselves, our family, our friends. We can also ask Google. Singles Day is getting a lot of results, and it's not just from China. We all know about this day. It has been branded for the past couple of years. I think at least for the past 2 years, we're seeing a lot of it, and we are all aware of it. So this is, I think the order is yes, we do see evidence for this. I will give a bit of a tip there, as this is, if you were still addressing the Chinese consumers here, which is a very good call. They are buying a lot on this holiday. You might be, you will want to check your mobile adoption and your social media presence. The Chinese are known to using their mobile quite a lot. It's their common practice for buying. Also, social media is a very, very hot issue and hot topic on the shopping spree there.
Okay, so that's in the event that you're actually marketing to the Chinese market.
Yes.
Obviously, you can try and create a local buzz wherever you are, and maybe make a sale around that to attract your local clientele, especially those who want to start the season a bit early. And there are also some who celebrate a bit later. We see here that Eastern Europe, they celebrate in the countries that made up the former Soviet Union, Novi God. Historically, Christmas was banned there, so the gift-giving holiday became Novi God, January 1st, and we can see this in our graph. You can see week 47 is Cyber Monday and Black Friday, and it's a spike both in Russia and in the rest of the world. But then the spike that comes ahead of Christmas on week 50 in the rest of the world comes a week later and reaches a max in the week before New Year's in Russia and its neighbors. So, I mean, if you want to drive shoppers from Eastern Europe to your site, you can extend your season a week longer than it would have been otherwise. Now, Emily, what do merchants need to know and notice about international shoppers coming in through the 4 sub-seasons?
I think we kind of talked about it a lot more. We talked about the Singles Day and Novi God and everything else. So just like to sum this up a bit, if you're looking on our international customers personas, we can see that in countries that celebrate Christmas, we have 2 spikes. One in the holiday shopping weekend, those self-gifters, and then the other one is in Christmas times where they're actually buying gifts. In countries that, or I would say customers that do not celebrate Christmas, we still see a hike in order amounts in the entire season, but we don't really have a very big specific spike here beside the holiday shopping weekend. So it will be a bit more still, and you will need to be alerted for the entire season. And I think maybe we should identify sometimes the personas or markets that we're actually targeting to identify where are the points that we can.
Right. So seeing the IP in this case could help you distinguish between somebody who's a self-gifter or a gifter.
It's interesting to check it by credit cards also.
Okay. Okay, like we said, we talked about ATO, and we just want to reiterate a lot of behavior that may look like ATO attacks are actually common for holiday shoppers. Emily mentioned velocity, where a single shopper is making multiple purchases on your site. That can look like a bot or a case of ATO, but fraudsters like to attack through account takeover when your team is off guard. And the holidays are a great opportunity for them. No one really wants to block or delay an order by a loyal customer or returning customer during the holidays, which is why this is prime time for ATO. So make sure you have the mechanism in place to protect your business, to get in-depth insight into old customers with new devices, or if they're coming in, an old customer with a new IP, etc. I have a link here on your screen to an ATO guide, and you're welcome to look at that. We'll also send the link along in an email after the webinar. Let's summarize a bit. This is a general summary of who's shopping and for what throughout the 4 sub-seasons. I think it helps put a face on the orders your team is dealing with, and hopefully gives context to some of the unusual stuff that you may be seeing. Also interesting to see is the 2 plotted lines. You've seen the green one before with peaks on Black Friday and Cyber Monday on the left, and a lull during Christmas on the right. But interesting to look at the blue plotted line, which represents only digital orders or orders for digital goods. And the big story there is a huge crescendo in orders as we near the actual holidays and the spike after the last shipping date has passed. So if we're going to wrap this up, let's talk about takeaways, unless you want to add something, Emily.
No, it was just looking a bit on the digital orders line, and it's very nice to see that what happens over there in Christmas and when it falls down and post-Christmas, like Christmas and done.
Right. Okay. In terms of takeaways, as we learned, the holidays are not a single homogeneous period of time. They include different shopping trends and behaviors. What's unusual or may seem risky in April may be totally legitimate and even expected in December. What we presented here is based on averages that take into account many different businesses from different industries. It's really important that you go back and look at your own data to try and distinguish what your own subseasons may be. You may have an additional one, you may have fewer ones, it may correspond with our findings, and it may not. Only you can really know by looking at your own data and looking at the most logical place to segment it. Where does the behavior change? Where do things look different than they did yesterday? And obviously, once you've done that, you need to make sure to revisit those rules that automatically flag orders for manual review and try to add more parameters to refine them to make sure they're in context with the day or the subseason, and to make sure you're not creating your with your own two hands a system that will suddenly flood your team with orders that actually make sense and should be easily approved.
I also think this might be an opportunity. If you're not seeing a lot of self-gifters on those, you might be missing out on something. If you're not seeing those gifters within the pre-Christmas season, also you might be missing on something. Those local holidays, international shoppers, all of these are things that you are able to have. You might not be having it because you're not used to it. It wasn't your first target. Everything makes sense, but it is something that you might have. Also, the fraud threats will be an issue on these times.
Okay. Do we have any, DJ, do we have any time for questions?
We are running up against the top of the hour, but we have time for our one, maybe two. So a few have come in. I'm going to remind you, please ask questions more if you want them, even if we don't get to them here live in the next minute or two. Someone from Riskify will get back to you on those. So first, I have, are international orders more risky around Christmas? Pretty simple question, but maybe not a simple answer.
I'll take that?
Yeah.
Okay. It's a good question. I think we're all usually a bit afraid of international orders, not because the international customers are riskier, but because international credit cards are usually used more for fraud. That does happen. But the international customers are completely fine. So maybe even another step back, we'll split the holiday season into two. One is the online shopping season, like Black Friday and Cyber Monday, which has a lot of sales and discounts in, and is quite it's quite international, and it's I think that's one of the growth engines there actually. So it's a world event, and this is where you'll see most of your legitimate international shoppers, which are browsing through the web to find those great deals that you're offering. But the other part is Christmas gift giving, which is a more domestic holiday. It's a family holiday, and most legitimate customers are at their homes or around their families eventually. So this is a bit less attractive to the international clientele. We also saw that in the split between countries with Christmas and celebrating Christmas and ones that do not. So they have already done their main shopping cycle, right? And those Black Friday and Cyber Monday stuff, leaving us with more place for fraudsters to disguise themselves as international customers, like they usually do.
So more risky towards the end.
Yes, but not the end, but the pre-Christmas and Christmas time. Those won't be a relevant time for international customers. I think it might look just to emphasize on this, because as an usually international customer, I get hurt quite a lot from this. International orders are not as risky as they are usually treated. They might look different, as we said, and they have inherent mismatches. I sometimes send to friends, it looks weird on the order, but this is just how we, as international customers, avoid obstacles that prevent us from buying, like limitations on shipping, or whether or not accepting a local credit card or a global one. So that is why we're sending to friends or to reshippers, and this might cause a lot of false declines over there.
Okay.
But generally speaking, they're not more risky around Christmas. Did I?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that was fantastic. We are right up to the next hour right now, so I wanted to thank everybody for hanging in with us the entire way. I want to thank Emily and Yarden. It was a really, really great presentation, and I hope it got folks thinking in different ways as they come into this really, really vital time for their businesses. So thank you to our audience, and thank you to our presenters, and we will see you next time.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.